You're seeing me now as Martha Stewart, the woman who built an empire. But let me tell you about a version of me you might not know as well. Martha, at 63 years old, who lost everything in a single sentence from a judge, 5 months in a federal prison, my company, my freedom, my reputation, everything slipped through my fingers, and I was completely alone. Today I'm going to share the 5 most important things I learned when I lost it all. And that 5th lesson, that's the one that saved me. That's the one that changed everything. But before we get there, you need to understand what really happened during those dark days of 2004. Because what I'm telling you today isn't about falling. It's about what you discover when you're at rock bottom. Before we begin, tell me, what city are you watching from right now? Leave it in the comments, subscribe to this channel, and hit that bell. I want to know where you all are. Now, let's start. It was July 2004. I was standing in federal court in Manhattan wearing my black Jill Sanders suit. The cameras were outside, hundreds of them. I had just been sentenced to 5 months in federal prison, not for insider trading. That charge had been dropped for lack of evidence, but for obstruction of justice. I want you to understand something. I had spent decades building Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia into a billion-dollar company. I was the first self-made female billionaire in America. I had 100 published books. I had a daily television show. I employed thousands of people. And in one moment, standing before that judge, I watched it all begin to crumble. The media was brutal. They called me arrogant. They said I got what I deserved. Former friends disappeared overnight. Business partners distanced themselves. My stock price collapsed by 70%. I went from being America's homemaking queen to a punchline on late-night television. But here's what nobody talks about. The hardest part wasn't the public humiliation. It was the isolation. When you're at the top, you're surrounded by people. The moment you fall, you discover how many of those people were there for your position, not for you. The first thing I learned, you don't control everything, and that's okay. For my entire life, I had been obsessed with control. Every detail mattered. Every flower arrangement had to be perfect. Every recipe tested 100 times. Every business decision carefully calculated. Control was my superpower. It's how a girl from Jersey City became a household name. But there I was, sitting in a courtroom, listening to a judge decide my fate. And there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. No amount of preparation, no perfect presentation, no carefully crafted statement was going to change what was happening. I remember the moment it truly hit me. I was in my attorney's office the day after sentencing, and I just sat there staring out the window at the East River. All my life, I had solved problems through sheer force of will. But this was beyond my control. And you know what happened? I had to let go. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. And in that letting go, something unexpected occurred. I discovered that the world doesn't fall apart when you're not controlling every detail. Life continues. The sun still rises. At Alderson Federal Prison Camp in West Virginia, I couldn't control my schedule, my meals, my visitors, or even when the lights turned off. Every single thing was decided for me. And somehow, I survived it. More than survived. I found a strange kind of peace in the surrender. This is something I need you to hear. especially if you're someone who, like me, believes that controlling everything is the only way to succeed. It's exhausting, and eventually, life will hand you something you can't control. The question is, will you fight reality until it breaks you, or will you learn to adapt? I'm not saying stop being thorough or stop caring about details. What I'm saying is understand the difference between influence and control. You can influence many things. You control very few. Now, before we go further, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and just type the word control if you're someone who struggles to let go. I want to see how many of us are out there. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because what I'm about to tell you next is something that changed my entire perspective on failure. The second thing I learned is that vulnerability is power. This one was hard for me, really hard. My entire brand was built on perfection. Martha Stewart doesn't make mistakes. Martha Stewart has the answer to everything. Martha Stewart's home is always immaculate, her gardens always blooming, her meals always restaurant quality. But then I went to prison. There's nothing perfect about prison. And when I came out, I had a choice. I could pretend it didn't happen, hide from it, bury it under new projects and perfect presentations. Or I could be honest about it. I chose honesty, and it terrified me. I remember my first television appearance after my release. Barbara Walters interviewed me, and she asked directly about my time in prison. And instead of deflecting or giving some polished corporate response, I told the truth. I said it was horrifying. I said it was lonely. I said there were nights I cried myself to sleep. The response shocked me. People connected with that vulnerability in a way they never connected with my perfect Thanksgiving turkey. Here's what I learned. Perfection doesn't inspire people. It intimidates them. But struggle, failure, getting back up after being knocked down, that's what people connect with. That's what actually helps them. Before prison, people admired me, but they didn't necessarily like me. After prison, when I showed my human side, when I admitted I had made mistakes and suffered consequences, something shifted. People saw themselves in my story. I'm not saying you should go out and fail publicly just to seem relatable. What I'm saying is don't hide your struggles. Don't pretend everything is always perfect. Because when you show people that you're human, that you've faced hardship and survived it, you give them permission to be human too. And here's the thing about vulnerability. It actually makes you stronger, not weaker. When you're pretending to be perfect all the time, you're afraid of being exposed. But when you're honest about your flaws and failures, there's nothing left to expose. You've already shown it all. The third thing I learned, authenticity beats perfection every single time. For years, my brand was aspirational. Everything I presented was the ideal version of life, the perfect home, the perfect garden, the perfect dinner party. And there's value in that, in showing people what's possible, in raising standards, in teaching techniques. But I had lost touch with something essential. I had forgotten that real life is messy. Real people don't have time to make their own puff pastry from scratch on a Tuesday night. Real homes have clutter. Real gardens have weeds. In prison, I met women with the most incredible stories. Women who had made terrible mistakes, but were fundamentally good people. Women who were funny and kind and resilient, and none of them cared about thread count or the proper way to fold a fitted sheet. It was weirdly freeing. When I came back, I made a conscious decision. I was going to be more real, less about the impossible standard, more about the achievable reality. I started talking about my failures, my mistakes, the times I burned the roast or killed the orchids. And you know what? People loved it. Turns out they didn't need me to be perfect. They needed me to be real. They needed someone who understood that life is complicated and that doing your best is enough. I'm still known for high standards. I still believe in doing things properly, but I've learned that authenticity, being genuinely yourself, flaws and all, is more powerful than any perfectly styled photo shoot. Here's my advice. Stop trying to present a flawless version of yourself to the world. It's exhausting for you, and it's not helpful to anyone else. Be excellent at what you do, absolutely, but be real about the journey. Be honest about the struggles. Show people the whole picture, not just the highlight reel. We're getting closer now to that fifth lesson, the one that truly changed everything. But first, you need to understand the fourth thing I learned. This one's about resilience, and it's critical. The fourth thing I learned is that starting over is a skill you can develop. I was 63 years old when I went to prison. 63. Most people at that age are thinking about retirement, about slowing down, and here I was, facing the possibility that my career was over, that my company would collapse, that everything I had built would be destroyed. There were moments when I thought about giving up, selling everything, moving to a quiet house somewhere, disappearing from public life. It would have been easier. No more public scrutiny, no more rebuilding, just quiet. But here's what I discovered. I'm not built for quiet. And more importantly, neither are you. Humans are incredibly resilient creatures. We're designed to adapt, to survive, to rebuild. The key is understanding that starting over doesn't mean starting from zero. Even when everything seems lost, you still have something invaluable. Your experience, your skills, your knowledge, the lessons you've learned. Nobody can take that away. When I got out of prison, my company's stock was in the basement. Advertisers had fled, retailers had dropped my products, but I still knew how to create content. I still understood business. I still had relationships with people who believed in me. And most importantly, I still had the work ethic I developed over decades. I didn't try to recreate what I had before. Instead, I looked at what the world needed now, what I could offer now, given everything I'd been through. I partnered with people who saw potential in my comeback story. I adapted my brand to be more accessible, more human. I used new platforms and technologies. Within a few years, I had rebuilt much of what I lost, not identical to before, but in some ways better. Because this version was built on a foundation of authenticity and resilience, not just perfection and control. So if you're facing a setback right now, here's what I want you to know. Starting over is not the end of your story. It's a new chapter. And the skills you develop in rebuilding, adaptability, creativity, determination, those will serve you for the rest of your life. Starting over isn't something that happens to you once. It's a muscle you build, and every time you use it, it gets stronger. Now we've arrived at the fifth and final lesson. This is the one that matters most. The one that, if you understand it deeply, will change how you see everything. The fifth thing I learned, your legacy is defined by how you rise, not by how you fall. Everyone falls. Everyone fails. Everyone faces moments when it seems like everything is collapsing. That's not what defines you. What defines you is what you do next. I could have stayed bitter. I could have blamed others. I could have let that prison sentence define the rest of my life. Many people would have understood if I had simply disappeared, but I didn't want that to be my story. I didn't want the last chapter of Martha Stewart's life to be about a fall from grace. I wanted it to be about resilience, about redemption, about showing that it's never too late to rebuild. And here's what I've learned. People don't remember the fall nearly as much as they remember the comeback. They don't dwell on your mistakes. They're inspired by your recovery. Look at my career now. Yes, people know I went to prison. But that's not what defines me anymore. What defines me is that I came back stronger, that I rebuilt my empire, that I showed vulnerability and authenticity, that I partnered with people half my age and stayed relevant, that I became friends with Snoop Dogg, for crying out loud. Your legacy isn't written by your circumstances, it's written by your choices. Every single day, you have the opportunity to choose how you respond to what life throws at you. You can choose bitterness or growth. You can choose to hide or to be authentic. You can choose to give up or to start again. I'm 83 years old now, and I'm still working, still creating, still building, because the story isn't over until you decide it's over, and I'm not done yet. So here's my final message to you. Whatever you're facing right now, whatever challenge seems insurmountable, whatever failure is haunting you, remember this. It's not about what happened to you. It's about what you do with what happened. You get to write your story, not the critics, not the circumstances, not the people who doubt you. You. So make it a story worth telling. Now I want to hear from you. What's your biggest takeaway from these 5 lessons? What's hitting home for you right now? Drop it in the comments. And if this resonated with you, subscribe to this channel, because next week I'm sharing the real story behind my choice between career and marriage and why I don't regret it. Remember, you don't control everything, and that's okay. Vulnerability is your power. Authenticity beats perfection. Starting over is a skill, and your legacy is how you rise. Thank you for being here with me today.